The focus of my talk today is koala habitat restoration. Are we restoring ecosystem function or accelerating its demise? The Northern Rivers restoration industry leads the world in the restoration of rainforests, and over the last decade has begun expanding into the open forest which koalas rely on for habitat. However, with industry training and experience almost exclusively focused on rainforest restoration, there is concern that repurposing of our trusted rainforest restoration methods may fail to restore functional, self-sustaining open forests. Open forests and rainforests, or closed forests, function in opposing ways. Open forests are defined by their open canopy and a high light environment, allowing development of a dense flammable ground layer which supports regular fire and which in turn maintains the open canopy. However, closed forests have a closed canopy and the dense shade suppresses the flammable ground layer, which helps keep fire out and the canopy closed. However, in the Northern Rivers region, regular fire has become rare in most open forest areas, leading to canopy closure by rainforest pioneers and weeds and threatening to displace koala habitat with closed forest. The demise of fire in the region is illustrated by a recent study in Byron, Shire, where we found that only 10% of open forest and heathland is within threshold for the maintenance of biodiversity, and that 61% is overdue for fire. The study also found that around 90% of primary coastal koala habitat is overdue for fire. In the absence of fire, rainforest invasion is rapid and widespread. In the 1990s, Byron Shire had nearly 3,000 hectares of dry open forest, which by definition has no rainforest plants in the understory. By 2016, only 16% remained, with rainforest mid-story invasion prompting more than 2/3 to be remapped as wet open forest and 15% as full rainforest. A dense rainforest mid-story prevents koala trees from regenerating. Koala feed trees typically regenerate after fire because they require bare ground and high light levels to germinate and grow, but it's simply too dark under a dense rainforest mid-story. Secondly, a dense rainforest mid-story can also lead to the premature dieback of koala feed trees by outcompeting the eucalypts for water, nutrients and light, creating unfavourable soil conditions, and rainforest invasion primes open forest for bell miner associated dieback, with the rainforest understory providing the ideal nesting habitat for bell miner colony establishment. Beyond the threats to koalas, a range of open forest species also sharply decline as rainforest pioneers invade open forests. Working with Joe Green from Byron Council, we assessed 13 dry open floodplain forest restoration sites. The review sought to determine whether restoration works were restoring an open canopy, restoring an open forest ground layer, and restoring the ecological function of open forests. The key principles of the national standards for ecological restoration in Australia are firstly that restoration should be based on an appropriate reference ecosystem with historical structure, composition and function, and secondly that these reference ecosystem attributes should provide the basis for restoration targets on your restoration site. For our assessment, we built a reference model for dry open forests from the literature, and we also measured 12 sites from reference old growth dry open floodplain forests in the Bundjalung Wilderness area. So was an open canopy restored on the Byron sites? The green band shows the canopy closure range for the old growth reference sites. For the restoration sites, the canopy closure was beyond or at the limit of reference conditions for all regeneration sites shown in blue and for all plantings once they reached 4 years of age. Another measure of canopy closure is leaf area index. All regeneration sites except one and planting sites at 5 years were found to be beyond the tolerance of open forest grasses. The high cover was mostly due to dense rainforest saplings stimulated by primary weed control on regeneration sites and the close spacing and high proportions of rainforest trees used in open forest plantings. Mean tree spacings in reference open forest was around 10 metres, while planting spacings were much closer with a mean of around 2.5 metres. And what about open forest ground cover? Mean ground cover in reference open forest was between 21 and 42%, while restoration site ground cover was below 10% on all but one site. And thirdly, are we restoring ecological function? All restoration sites were found to be long overdue for fire, suggesting open forest biodiversity is likely to be in decline on all sites. Despite this threat, fire had not been restored to any sites, and due to restoration works exacerbating canopy closure and ground layer elimination, ecological burns are no longer feasible on most sites. So in summary, the gold band represents reference open forest conditions with an open canopy, dense ground layer and regular fire. When we first turn up to most degraded sites, the canopy is starting to close, the ground layer is being shaded out and fire is overdue. Our restoration efforts should be restoring open forest back to reference conditions, but what we found is that current approaches are pushing these forests further away from reference conditions towards closed forest. Moving forward, restoration targets should be based on appropriate reference sites where regular fire still occurs. Restoration of historical fire regimes is crucial for success. Koala planting should be at least at 8 metre spacings and rainforest plants should not be used. A dense ground layer should be recognised as a key indicator of open forest health, and we urgently need industry education and training to raise awareness of the threats of fire exclusion and canopy closure to open forest, and also increase knowledge of appropriate restoration solutions.